I want to hear more about how you teach your riders to have a strong position when they're riding. Are you having them strength train? Are you working on specific drills in the saddle? Like, what are you doing to create that really strong, classic, collegiate horsemanship look?
Yeah, I love it. So after my student athletes have an understanding of how to ride a horse is when I then focus on the position. Right. For me, 90% of being a world champion in horsemanship, in my opinion, is knowing how to ride your horse. The final 10% is icing on the cake, the body position things, right? And so once I understand that you understand the expectation of being a good horse rider with your leg, with your seat, with your core, all those things, right? Then we can go to the body position things.
Welcome to Elevate Your Ride, the podcast dedicated to elevating your performance in the saddle. I'm Ellie, your personal trainer.
And I'm Lauren, your mindset coach.
Okay, today we are bringing on Collegiate Equestrian coach Bobbie Piddock. Bobbie left an undeniable mark on Division I programs across the SEC, Big 12, and ECAC conferences, leveraging her 9 years of experience to elevate competitive equestrian teams. With a bachelor's degree in psychology from UC Davis and a master's in sports administration from Arkansas State, Bobbie began her coaching career at UC Davis as a volunteer assistant and Western assistant coach. She later transformed the University of South Carolina's Western program by bringing the nation's leading recruits, doubling the program's win percentage, leading the team from unranked to fourth nationally, having multiple NCAA and SEC Riders of the Month, and an All-American. Recently, at Baylor University, she tripled the horsemanship win percentage, earning a first-team All-American and Big 7 Rider of the Year. Bobbie, thank you so much for coming on with us today. We want to talk all things collegiate equestrian athletics, focusing on how you prepare your riders all season long and right before a big competition. So first, can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to start coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of a fun story, a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to make it short. But I kind of all throughout college didn't know what I was going to do for a living. I majored in psychology because I could do a bunch of different things. Right? I could become a therapist. I could go to law school. I could kind of do quite a bit of things. And I figured, why not just get an education about human beings, right? How people operate, people's behavioral things, how to communicate with people in different ways. And, let's see where that leads me. And so I even started, I was like an ag business major too before that. So kind of just didn't know what I was going to do throughout college. And then I had transferred to UC Davis from UT Martin, kind of got into the college writing atmosphere pretty late in my high school career. Most kids get recruited the summer of their sophomore year of high school. I didn't start looking into writing in college until late in my senior year of high school. And so just kind of didn't really have a plan. Then I go to college, don't really have a major. Ended up transferring back home to UC Davis just because it was closer to family. And then through that process, I kind of helped the head coach at the time, Jesse Weisinger, alongside because of transfer rules at the time. I had to redshirt and set out a year or so, and she was just building that program up. It was a brand new program in 2019, and so right when I transferred in was like the first season of it, and so spent a lot of time with her, just kind of student coaching next to her. She likes to say, even though it wasn't really officially probably student coaching, just hanging out with her, helping her coach practices, helping her get horses ready, riding the naughty horses that maybe we couldn't, that were just into our program and just trying to get used to the format, things like that. And so kind of through that process, we'd be really close. I had so much respect for her as the head coach and just loved to learn from her. And one day, my senior year, she was like, "Hey, you wanna coach in college?"
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great story. Can you tell us about how your degree in psychology helped you coach your athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to explain it to somebody the other day because I can't remember like a ton of specifics, right? Like 9 years ago, I studied psychology and I can't tell you what philosopher, what psychologist said these certain things or had these theories and or what research I did specifically, but I got an incredible education that kind of taught me like, okay, you have different communication styles. So every student athlete that I met with every program that I entered, I asked them like, how do you prefer to learn? Like it was one of the had like always had individual meetings with each kid at the beginning of the season and and was like, okay, hey, my name's Coach Bobbie. Here's a little bit about me. How do you like to learn? What can I do to best support you in the arena in practice every single day to make you the best performer that you can be? And so that started with the communication style, of course. And so are you a verbal person? Do you have to hear it over and over again? Are you a very visual learner? Do you have to see it happen to you? Do you need both of those things, right? Do you need to see it? Do you need to watch me get on a horse and show you what I'm talking about? Or do you need both of those things? Like, how can I best support you in the arena? And there's a really cool kid at the University of South Carolina, one of the sweetest human beings I ever met. But she, like a couple weeks later after I'd asked her that question, she kind of was in tears and she's like, I'm just so grateful you asked me that question because I have learned so much because you were able to help me so much better too. So I always made that a priority. I think that's just one big example. I think that you have different personalities in the collegiate atmosphere, right? You have a team of 40 to 60, sometimes even less than that, maybe 20 to 60 individuals, depending on what team you're on, what conference you're in. And, all those people have to be able to get along and work together and do all of those things. And so you have a bunch of different personalities from all over the country. And I learned a lot about how to connect those personalities and help kind of create and foster a really cool environment in the arena that's communicative and things like that. So can I tell you specifically that, Freud said, this, that, and the other? No, but I learned a lot of just different communication skills, I would say. Things that I can say and do and describe and break down. I'm a very black and white person. I think that's how I educate pretty well too, is that I'm instructions and my expectations and things like that. And so because I'm pretty black and white, I try to make that pretty black and white and understandable for any of my expectations, was what I'm talking about for any of the student athletes that work with me as well. So
I love how you break down the different learning styles because that is like an often overlooked area in any field of education, whether it's just in school, but especially when it comes to us in the saddle. And so, what resources have you been able to find that kind of can supplement these different learning styles for people? And if somebody's listening and has never been asked, well, what's your learning style? Like, how can you relate that to the horses so maybe then they can go and say, this is how I learn, and I think I would learn better by looking at these different things.
I think I'm going to try to circle back. And if I'm not circling back to what you're asking, remind me to kind of connect the dots here because, you have your learning styles, but you also have your coaching styles, right? And I think getting into the coaching style is going to help you understand the learning style better because I do think there's kind of a universal route that all horse trainers can take and all should, and a lot do. I think the greats do, and it's discussion of fundamentals and fixing fundamentals. I talk to a lot of coaching friends across the country, but in other sports. So one of my really, really good friends, Brett, is a football coach. He's their special teams coach. And I ask him all the time, we just have certain coaching, I don't know, just random conversations about our careers and stuff like that. So I try to compare what I'm doing in the horse world to doing when he's teaching a kid to kick a field goal. And I was like, it's kind of interesting because when I've come into 2 programs with coaches, that were prior to me that just have very different coaching styles, not saying they were wrong, but just very different coaching styles. And so, when I enter these programs, I talk to all these kids, I ask them how they learn, what works for them. But what I've learned is that the coaching style that encompasses going back to fundamentals, the finishing touches on everything, all of the final details usually go back to fundamentals. Like, what can you do at your basic prime level? And so my friend Brett describes it as you can coach the solution or you can coach the cause.
Mm.
And you're like, you listen to that and you're kind of like, what? And what he meant by that, he's like, for example, I have a kid that's going to go take his field goal, right? Or he's punting. I think it's punting, right? I don't know football very well, but he's going to go punt the football. And, let's say he goes up and kicks that ball and it veers off to the right really bad. To coach the solution of that, you would say like, well, step farther this way, maybe, and then hopefully your foot would aim the other direction and it would straighten out. Or you can coach the cause of the problem. Like maybe the way he's stepping is different than the approach, or I don't even know. I guess that's not a very good example. I'm not good at explaining football, but I like to coach the fundamentals of the situation. So let's say a kid who is riding a horse is having a problem with her body position. I think there's one thing that I run into a lot in college athletes in equestrian is that my leg isn't long enough or my seat isn't in the right position or things like that. Like I'm going to sit a little tighter, a little bit more abrasively, all these things, and I'm going to look better on the horse. And so I always say the reason you're not sitting correctly is because you have a lack of connection with your horse. Like, let's focus on the connection through your leg and seat, and that's going to fix your body position by nature. And I always resort back to the fundamentals of the definition of horsemanship in the AQH rulebook, which how I broke it down for the girls is horsemanship is designed to evaluate their rider's ability to execute in concert with their horse a set of maneuvers prescribed with precision and smoothness while exhibiting poise and confidence and maintaining a balanced, functional, and fundamentally correct position. So anytime a kid has a problem in the arena, I bring up this definition. Like, yes, you need your poise and confidence, but we also need the balance and functionality of your position, the correct use of your leg, things like that. So I hope that's a better way to explain kind of what my friend Brett was saying about cooking, because again, I don't know sport very well, but to solve the cause of the issue instead of fixing just the solution of it, the quick fix, I guess, more for lack of a better word. So when you approach as a coach your student athletes in that realm, things are automatically always more clear to them, right? Like, oh yeah, like if I fix this inherent issue that I've been having in my seat in the way I'm like maybe tucking my tailbone a little too much or sitting at the forefront of my seat bones a little too much, maybe if I fix that small thing, it's going to help this situation later on. And so when you're really, really clear and concise and resort back to the fundamental rules of the sport, you're always going to have a better experience with your student athletes. But I also think that when you ask these kids, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Like a lot of these kids that I've asked this question, like nobody's ever asked me that before. I'm like, how do you learn in school? Like, do you see pictures in your head when you are talking to people, or do you just hear words? Like, how does your brain work and operate? Those sorts of things. So remind me your original questions so I can connect it a little bit better, because I'm almost there, but remind me your specific ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you described like the coaching style and going back to the fundamentals, because that is just the basis of everything. And you can just go so much further when you have that strong foundation. So it totally makes sense that that resonates with the kids. And what the question that I had asked originally was, how would somebody know what their learning style is
Yes.
with horses? And then what resources do you kind of lean on once they tell you their learning style in regards to horses?
Yeah, I always just ask them like, what I think I kind of touched on that. I was like, what do you in school, like, how do you learn when you're learning a new math equation? Do you need to see your teacher write it out 1,000 times? Like I myself am a very visual person. For example, when I was studying in college, when I was reflecting, was studying for an exam, instead of like thinking about the definition in my head, I would see the definition of whatever I needed to recall on a piece of paper in a certain color in that writing. So I have a very like, I think I'm a pretty type B person, but I have a very visual like mind. And so I just try to foster a conversation that breaks down like how that person's brain operates when they're in those sorts of situations. Or, I think every kid can kind of recall his situation. And most people are probably visual learners, right? It's a little bit easier to see things because it's more fundamentally interactive way to do things, right? It's like how little kids, interact with the world. They learn about the world. It's social cues, things like that later on too. I think all people are like that, even adults too. So again, you're never really going to go wrong by visually showing somebody hopping on the horse and showing them what you're talking about. But because you understand that that kid's a pretty visual learner, you can also elaborate in depth a lot more too when you're describing those things too. Some kids just get it and are a little bit different, and you can just say, hey, left rein, right leg, blah, 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 get the job done. And they're like, yes, ma'am. And they go do it. And it's pretty clear. So you just have to you just also want to understand what that student needs to, or you have to want to understand how that kid operates so that you can foster better communication. At the end of the day, when you're a college coach, you have 5 kids in the arena for an hour at a time, and you do that 3 or 4 times a day minimum. So you have to be able to do things pretty quick. And so the more you can understand the person you're working with, the better, the more functional it is too. So
Absolutely. And, it's kind of interesting because when we move into the collegiate competition realm, it's a level playing field. It doesn't matter what you've won before getting there, because you're pulling the horse out of the hat. It's not something that you have a bond with and that have worked really hard and maybe are fortunate to have a slightly better horse or a quote unquote better training situation. It is very level. So, what advice do you have mentally for kids who have maybe come up not being that number one rider and now having an opportunity to have like a level-ish playing field? How can they have confidence from the get-go that, hey, this is a opportunity for me to be able to step up and shine that maybe I wouldn't have had before? Do you find that that's difficult for people to believe?
I love that you asked that question, because I am that kid. I was that kid, I should say, when I was a student athlete. I didn't have the most expensive horse in the state of California growing up, so and I kept it at home. I was a DIYer like you, and in the backyard, and
Yeah.
would get bucked off my radical rotter, gelding at the age of 14, and then I haul up to the wheelers on the weekends and say, "Help me," and then they'd have to help me, give me lessons, do all these things. I gained a lot of experience. Again, fundamentally helping them ride and start 2-year-olds in the summer, to help work off show bills, things like that. So I had a lot of opportunity there too as a DIYer, kind of going off into there. But I was that kid that didn't have necessarily the win confidence, right? Because I was doing all this by myself. So I'd go in the arena and win one out of every 15, 20 times first prize, right? And so most of the other, 14 times were learning experiences for me. And so, and hard ones that most people maybe would be embarrassed about or upset about, but I just thought it was fun. Like I wanted to be a horse trainer. When I was 16, my parents were the reasons why I went to college. They're like, you got to go get a degree. And then if you want to be a trainer out there, go do that. But so I was that kid and I came into the collegiate atmosphere. Again, this was back in 2016 was my freshman year. And when I stepped into it, I was like, this is freaking fun. Like this is what I know how to do. I know how to ride weird, naughty horses because I had a weird, naughty horse. And I know how to I don't know, pull and push on a horse, and I know their body angles and those sorts of things because, hey, I helped the wheeler start a bunch of 2-year-olds and ride 2-year-olds and show 3-year-olds and do these things. I learned so much from lunging 20 horses at a horse show for them. I learned so much about horses' body language and demeanor and things like that. I mean, there's so much you can learn that you want to learn. The other thing that I did too was would watch the warm up pen all day long. If I wasn't showing my horse, I would go just watch the warm up pen and I'd watch what the people winning were doing. And I would say, I should probably do that. And, things that weren't going well based off horse's reaction, I'm like, no, I probably shouldn't do that. And then I'd go try to apply that to my horse. And sometimes it'd work and sometimes I get bucked off and things like that. So again, I entered the atmosphere very much the kid that wasn't the one winning. I'd win buckles here and there at little, shows like that and Pacific Coast Sport Horse Association, whatever. But I wasn't the kid that was winning the world show every year. So I wasn't going to the majors. I wasn't doing any of that. And so anyways, I'd get into the college atmosphere and I'm like, hey, this is kind of fun. Like, I know how to ride a horse. I might not look pretty doing it, but I do know how to ride a horse. And so I did have a lot of success my freshman year. I came in only showing the horsemanship my whole life and not the reining, but because I had enough fuel, my coach at the time was like, hey, you want to do the reining too? And so I had the opportunity to do both and had success in both. One of my all-time favorite rides my freshman year, I MLP'd at Georgia on this horse named Otto, and he's retired. And he just was one of the most fun horses I've ever ridden. And I talk about that ride a lot because again, freshman year, I'm 17 years old, maybe 18 years old. I had no experience. I'm at the University of Georgia riding for a smaller collegiate team, not in the Big 12 or the SEC conference, and was able to MOP. And so I hope that is kind of inspire anybody that is listening that maybe does feel insecure about that. But my best advice too is when you're going into that atmosphere and maybe you don't have that name in that title, make sure you're doing your homework outside of just showing your horse, whether that's going and riding for a different trainer or whether that, doing work for a different trainer is what I'm saying, whether that's, volunteering to go ride some horses for your horse trainer, whether that's lunging horses, things like that, whatever you can learn, the more opportunity you have to get on a young horse and again, go learn how horses need to be pushed and pulled on for success, learning what pressure is, learning what release reward is, those sorts of things are going to make you successful at riding horses. And so that's really where my confidence came from. And so with that experience, and I walked into the University of South Carolina and they're coming off of a huge losing streak and, a lot of doubt. I came in as a 23-year-old and kid and was like, hey, I'm this kid that's a nobody. And I, rode for some small ECAC schools and here I am, let's go in. And I think that mentality of knowing your fundamentals, knowing how to ride horses, going out there and being fundamentally correct first, meaning, we still use the +1.5 to minus 1.5 scale in the collegiate format, going out there and making sure that we're zeroing each maneuver box instead of -1ing every maneuver box is where we're going to start. Once we got really successful doing that, we went and we, worked on our +1s for every maneuver box. We had some really tricky horses at USC. And so teaching those kids how to train on horses, I think really helped that program become successful. I was there with owner for 2 years, but helped turn that program around to 4th in the nation because they had to figure out how to train some naughty freaking horses that didn't have buttons, that didn't want to do their job. And it was a really fun process. But I think that gave them so much confidence too, because they could do it, because they had the tools to go do it. So I hope that kind of answers. Again, I hope I'm answering questions. Just kind of like to tell stories.
Oh, yeah.
But
No, these have been wonderful. Like, I love the stories that you're sharing and everything.
awesome.
Are you looking for that extra competitive edge, struggling with show pen anxiety, or looking to set and achieve meaningful goals with your horse? Schedule a session with me, Lauren, your dedicated mindset coach. As an experienced competitor, I understand the mental demands required to excel at the highest level, and I'm here to support you in building a plan to help you stay accountable and reaching those goals. For more information, check out laurencervelli.com or click on the website link in our show notes. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
Hi, everyone. It's your personal trainer, Ellie. If you're looking to become a stronger, more balanced, and flexible rider, I'm here to help. I offer virtual personal training sessions and customized workout plans that you can complete on your own. As a fellow competitor, I understand the physical demands riding requires, and my goal is to help you perform your best for your horse, whether you're preparing for a show or just want to improve your everyday rides. Visit lopindowntherailfitness.com or click on my website tab in the notes of this podcast episode to learn more. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
And, like, going back to the South Carolina, when you came in, like you said, they were on a losing streak. So, the mentality in the locker room, was it kind of, like, heavy? And then how did you turn that whole energy around? Was it simply in the arena by doing the fundamentals and building confidence? Or did you do things off of a horse to try to build morale as
Oh,
well?
hello, it's my favorite question, because it's both. And so, going in there again as this 23-year-old kid, and they're like, "Who's this girl?" I didn't go in there with a chip on my shoulder, like I had something to prove to them. I was like, "But we have some damn work to do, and let's get to work." And I think a lot of it was, I don't want to say luck, but a little bit of it was luck too. I was blindly confident, like I was confident in my own abilities, therefore they were confident in me. But I was a little bit like relentlessly confident in what we could do with that program, and I, had the opportunity to work with two coaches, head coach and associate head coach, who were so just ready to win too, and were so open ears to the things that I brought to the table. And again, people that are older than me that had way more experience than me, were very willing to listen to my ideas that I have from a cultural mental standpoint to a this is what we need to do with our horse flesh to make this program better standpoint too, to help these kids become better riders. And luckily, those two coaches were also huge on fundamentals, and they're both, the jumping side of things too. And so, it was just again very exciting to see them also believe like teach these kids how to ride horses better, and they're going to go be better in this show pen too. Because it is an even playing field. But also, we did the work outside of the arena. We were lucky to have a sports psychologist that worked specifically with our team only, and then we also had a mental performance coach, two different things. And I can dive into that a little bit too. But
Yeah, I would love to hear the difference that you noticed between the sports psychologist and the mental performance
yes,
coach. Those would be
of course.
interesting.
So, sports tech she would work with our team once a week after our Wednesday meetings, and she would do little group activities like, here's our balloon of doubts. Like, let's write our doubts in this balloon. Let's rip this piece of paper up, or let's pop this balloon. But she would also do the individualized, like sports type things. So let's say, a specific student athlete was having mental performance issues, like that her role was to be the go-to person for that, to provide advice and work over those mental performance or those sort of boundaries, issues, things like that. So you have your mental performance gal separately who she was amazing, incredible woman, but she like worked with military and a bunch of the other teams at USC too. But she would come on our like team bonding trips and break down like the core of working together as a team and how teams mentalities are, assessing where teams mentality is based off of some like cool operative game or interactive thing, her observations, and then she break down like where we can go from there too. So I think having both of those people in there with their different approaches really helps. But I would say like on the culture side of things, because we as a staff were really bought into like how we needed to change their mentality, and there was some baggage from I think, the program had 2 coaches changes prior to me, within a 3 or 4-year period, and, there's some baggage that went along with that too, so I would spend a lot of time with the girls in the arena. We had this thing called Team Ride Friday, and it was where the entire team of 40, 20 jumping seat, 20 Western athletes would go to the farm, and, we'd have jumping seat practice and Western practice, and we had 2 hours to do it all, and we would cram all of these activities in these 2-hour time span, and at the beginning of Team Ride Fridays, that whole first year, I would just talk to my athletes. I would be like, "What," like, one of my favorite ones, and there's a picture of it, it's really special, but, one of my favorite ones was the beginning of when I got there was put everybody, all 20 girls in a circle, the Western girls, and I said, "Hey, why are you here? What made you choose to be here at the University of South Carolina? Why are you here given the baggage that you've experienced over the last, 3, 4, 5 years?" And, it was just one of the cool, most raw, vulnerable conversations I've been able to have with student athletes before, and lots of tears and lots of whys, and, being able to carry those whys and reflect back on those whys throughout the rest of the season when it was bad, because, through when you're having to learn a whole new program, whole new set of fundamentals, whole new tips and tricks to being successful student athletes, right? You have uphills and downhills. And so when we were in those downhills of like really hard learning experiences, maybe a big loss at an away school or at an away meet, we'd always resort to those whys, why we're here, why we're doing this, what our end goal is. We would spend the year assessing our goals as a team, assessing our goals as individual riders. And so anytime there was, any sort of, again, difficulty, a team loss or an individual loss, you can always have meetings with the student athletes together or individually and reflect on like, okay, what are we going to do next to move forward to? So there just was so much buy-in because everybody was ready to win, and that's what made it fun. And because they had a lot of buy-in, and I also had a lot of energy to win and go make something of that program, it just was just a fun. It worked. It worked really well.
That's really cool. I love how you had them talk about their why and go through their goals and everything. Is that something that you guys wrote down and then could refer back to?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like you have those vulnerable conversations too, where people are crying, and you don't forget some of the things that those kids say, because they're
Right.
being so vulnerable too. So that's one special part of that experience of doing it as a whole, because then everybody else is saying, like Susie might be able to watch Katie say her why, and Katie share those tears, and Susie might be maybe a little bit more understanding of Katie on a bad day, that sort of thing. So there's that aspect of it as well. I might be more understanding of Katie why she's having a bad day on that horse because of whatever her why is. So there's that, but there's also, yeah, I had brought out a little like legal pad out there and wrote them all down and wrote their names down next to it, and kind of pulled some. I do remember like pulling some general themes too. Like you had a lot of girls have some similar themes as to what their why was too, and so that sort of thing. Yeah, for sure.
Can you elaborate on those? Like, do you remember what some of the similarities were?
Yeah, let me think. A lot of I don't want to say anything negative about the program or experience or negative recruit or anything like that. Some of them were like because it was not good. That is my why. Like I want we have this opportunity here this year with a new coach. We have nothing to lose. Let's go and do this. You have some kids that are like, I came on my there's a lot of these, which I think was cool and kind of maybe unique to USC too. Whereas when seniors that were there on their official visits, 6 years prior, were like, I had this incredible experience that like this light bulb went off. It was like, this is my home, and I'm seeing this through. Like I don't want to give up on this program yet too. So there was a lot of that really, really cool aspect of it. There was just a lot of like, I know this is home for me. Like I know USC is the place I need to be. Let's build it together. You had kids that were like me who were like, I wasn't anybody. This one was cool because I could relate to it. Like I wasn't anybody in the industry, and now I'm here and I'm competing, and I wanna keep going. And then you have kids that maybe aren't competing that are just like, I have so much gratitude for just being in this arena, and I have so much gratitude for these kids that maybe are competing, and I love my role here not competing, and I want to see it flourish, and how can I help build this program too. So you had a lot of people that just knew their role, whatever it was, and wanted to see that roll out all the way through.
When it comes to like collegiate competition, it is a team sport like you've been referring to. How do you transition us from being individuals before we come on to these collegiate teams and then turn them into team players where you have the people who say, I'm not competing right now, but I want to support so and so, and I want to be an integral role because, like, as you and I doing it, we know like that we need every single person. But how do you get people to buy into that on freshman year when they know they're not going to be competing from day one?
Yeah, I'll talk about my experience at Baylor a little bit. I was there for a year after I was at USC, and bigger team. I went from working with a team of 40 and having 20 student athletes to a team of 60, and then only I think I was coaching 21 horsemanship student athletes. So I guess it was about the same, but just I was only coaching horsemanship at Baylor, and had the opportunity again that the first couple weeks being there to sit every one of my 21 athletes in the office with me and get to know them on a deeper level. And you find with maybe some of those larger teams that it's a little bit tougher to find your role, right? You have 40 kids and you're pretty certain, I'm sure you know this, like each of those 40 kids are going to have something to do. But when you have 60 kids, like there's a little bit, maybe less activities to do. There's always something to do, but it's a little bit different, right? So maybe you have a kid, on a team of 40 that knows her job is to band 6 horses every morning and she loves that role. And she's maybe not a competitor, but she loves to help make that horse as presentable as possible in the arena. you know, I think it's a little bit easier on a smaller team. So you walk into a situation where you have a bigger team and people trying to find their roles. And it's a really, really cool kid. I want to say her name. I always say her name. But she, at the beginning of last year, she was like, she was in her junior year and she was like, I had a horrible freshman year. I just, I didn't connect with people how I wanted to. I'm just now starting to find my friend group. My sophomore year, maybe she was sophomore. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think she was sophomore, I was junior. So her freshman year, she struggled connecting, and she's like, "I'm just now starting to like find my friend group and who I am, and stay on my morals." It's like that. She's like, "But I don't know what my role is here on this program," and she's like, "I don't really know how you can help me either." And so I was like, "Okay, okay, let me see what I can do. Let's think about this." And I gave her a lot of self responsibility too. Is like, listen, if you want to make an impact on this program. And maybe it's not in the arena this year. Like, what are you doing out? And maybe you're not close with a lot of these teammates. So what are you gonna do to make a mark on these other people on your team, right? On your teammates? What are you gonna do when you're not hanging out with them and maybe when you're not competing? And she was like, well, I don't really know. I was like, well, we gotta start there. We have a really cool group of freshmen. We have a class of I can't remember how many freshmen came in that year, but let's say there were 10 freshmen that came in. I was like, we have a class of 10 freshmen who are lost. They have no idea what's happening. Uh, they're going to be looking to these upperclassmen, be one of those upperclassmen to these people. Don't be afraid to speak to them, to help them, to guide them, figure out what their role is too, just as you're trying to find your role. And maybe that's the role you fill. Like maybe it's that mentorship role. And then as I got to know her as a writer, she was a handy kid. Like she really did have a lot of fuel and love for horses. And I really bought into her. Again, she wasn't a competitor, wasn't quite as strong in positionally speaking, but I really bought into her ability to connect with a horse. And by the end of it, I saw her mom at a horse show in Waco, and her mom pulled me aside and she was like, "Thank you so much for helping my daughter find her role and buying into her and listening to her because she didn't know if she was gonna stay. This is tough for her, and she's really, really found her light there, and so we just really appreciate it. And that's just kind of listening. Like every kid is lost, right? We're all lost at some point. All adults are lost too, So however you can help that kid fill a role, you can. And I just kind of believed in her and who she was, and loved her as the writer. Loved her for the writer that she was, but also loved her for wanting to figure out how she could make a mark too, and she did that role, and so she was great. It was cool.
That had to have been so rewarding as a coach to be able to have those experiences where you see people evolve not only in the arena as horsemen, but just as individuals.
Absolutely. That was the driving factor of doing it and the hardest part of walking away from it, I would say. I always say like I did that job for Christ first, but also for the horse and for the student athlete and for myself. Like that was the order of my whys, I should say. Those were my whys. And so I love horses. I love Jesus. I love the student athletes, and they were so fun to work with. One of my favorite. Do one of this podcast to be a little bit about like the mental performance side of things. I think one of my favorite stories too
Yeah.
at Baylor was at a kid who incredible horsewoman, but just struggled on the mental performance side. Like just like could ride anything outside of the show pen, get in the show pen, and just not be successful how she wanted to be successful. And so she sat in my office. One of my roles at Baylor was to be a player personnel coordinator too. So any student athlete, not just sportsmanship athletes, can come to my office and seek resources, maybe they need connections for like career mentorship, blah, blah, blah. My role is to kind of push them to their resources at Baylor, but then also kind of help them on the mental performance side of things too, with my background in psychology and just passion for these kids and passion for, um, mental performance, things like that. And so this kid sat in my office and I, again, me being very visual, I was like, "All right, let's walk you through one of your collegiate writing experiences. Like, I'm gonna put you on X course at this facility, and we're doing pattern 3." And so I had her close her eyes, and she sat there, and I was like, "Okay, now walk me through every stride of pattern 3." And she's like, "Okay, well, I lope in." She's a Rainer. I don't know if I said that, but she's like, "Okay, I lope in and tell around the ends," and she's starting to talk through this, and she's shaking, like hands are shaking, voice is trembling, everything is just a nervous ball, and all she's doing is sitting there entering on the right lead of pattern 3, So it was really, really interesting to watch that and see kind of just where that mental barrier was, but then to walk her through the process. I think we met 3 or 4 times going through that same scenario, similar scenarios, visualization, closing her eyes, and um, going over again. I always go back to fundamentals, right? Like, okay, you're loping in on pattern 3 on the right lead, and your horse is leaning on your left leg, and drag you to the fence line. Like, what are we doing during that process? As you're loping in, and she's like, "Well, I don't know." I'm like, "Well, this is where the barrier is, right? Like, you've got to be able to know that when you're loping in on the right lead, and your horse lean on your left leg, you might need to push a little left leg, pull a little, draw a little left rein down, right? Like, flag your horse if it's stolen up, like flag your forward, whatever it might be. Like you've got to have tools in that toolbox to be able to assess the situation and fix it right away, because if it's leaning on your left leg down the first line, it's sure as heck going to drag you to the rail when you go to stop on the other end." So, um, just was such a rewarding process to watch a kid go from shaking and trembling in her voice very excessive one to, the next semester absolutely killing it. So just again, such a rewarding thing to be a part of. Super grateful for it, and was my favorite part of the job.
Did you find that the visualization techniques helped kind of the most of being able to talk through and see that and explain what they would do in those situations? Or what kind of tools did you guys develop and put in the toolboxes for them?
Um, you know, Let me think about that. I think it's really, really helpful to assess again where that mental barrier is, but undoubtedly building tools in the toolbox outside of just that visualization process. And I think, that visualization process in the office led to like, okay, well, how would you solve it? Okay, so I would walk her through, for example, in a different session, I'd walk her through, okay, you're stopping in the middle of the pen, you're turning your horse to the right, and strapping its right shoulder, and it's pulling its nose out to the left. Like, what are you going to do to solve that problem? And when a kid can't stay, and you're minus one in your turns, might I add, right? Like, what are you gonna do to turn that minus one into a 0? And that would lead to conversations of, again, going back to fundamentals of how you pull and push on horses, and what you need to put the parts in the right spot, fundamentals of a turn, and got to be correct first, those sorts of things. And so it always led back to the conversation of, you know, developing those tools for the toolbox, if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, going back to the fundamentals.
Okay. Absolutely.
Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. I wanted to take a moment to thank our very first gold sponsor, Hobby Horse Clothing Company. If you're looking for a cost effective way to elevate your look at the horse show, check out what Hobby Horse has to offer. From budget friendly crystal jackets to simple show shirts to stylish lifestyle tops, Hobby Horse has everything you need to look your best. Make sure you use code EYR2025 for an additional 10% off at checkout. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to Elevate Your Ride. We're so excited to continue helping you elevate your performance in the saddle. To keep bringing you quality content and information, we're asking you to help us. Tell your friends about us on our podcast, like and share a meaningful quote you saw on our social media, write us a review on Spotify or Facebook. You can also join our Facebook group and ask all your health and fitness questions, or maybe post a success story to motivate another amateur. Your engagement really helps us support and encourage the equestrian community. We're also inviting sponsors and supporters to help us build our show. As a sponsor, starting at just $150, you'll receive marketing on our podcast, website, and growing social media platforms for your business. It's the perfect way to connect with the equestrian community and showcase your brand to our dedicated listeners. And for our supporters, your $50 contribution gets you a shout out on our social media and website. Every bit of support really helps fuel the show and helps us inspire and motivate equestrians. So, if you're interested in learning more about that, you can scroll down to the show notes of this episode and look for the Become a Supporter or Become a Sponsor links and click on those to get some more information. Thank you for listening. We can't wait to continue expanding our platform and helping you elevate your ride.
Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. Are you loving our show and looking for a way to show your support? Check out our line of Elevate Your Ride merchandise. From stylish t-shirts to cozy hoodies to journals and hats, we have everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Ready to gear up? Click on the Buy Our Merchandise Here link in the podcast notes, or head on over to our website, elevateyourride.co, and click on the Store tab. Thank you for your support. Make sure to like, follow, and share our platform with your friends.
This is actually something that I wanted to talk to you about is way back in the beginning you were talking about fundamentals and finding the cause of the issue and treating the cause instead of the symptom. And that idea is just so true. And I saw this quote the other day that said, the long way is the shortcut because the
Mhm.
shortcut never gets you there. And it's just so true. So if an athlete is having an issue with their body part, I, of course, look at it from the personal trainer perspective. So if
Right.
someone comes to me and says, I can't get my shoulders back, I'll ask, okay, how's your posture in your daily life? Are you sitting at a desk all day long? Are you slumped when you're driving in the car? Like, what is it in your daily life that's causing this physical issue? But
Mhm.
it's also so true that we tend to compensate for what we're lacking in our connection with our horse with
Uh-huh.
our body. So,
Absolutely.
someone who has poor connection in their hand might have their hand way too far forward or way too far back based on what the horse wants to do.
Mhm.
And maybe if the rider worked on why they don't have the good connection, then the position would improve. So
Yes.
they go hand in hand. You have to have the physical ability with your body, but you
Mhm.
also have to learn how to use your body effectively to
Mhm.
communicate with that horse. So how
Absolutely.
do you teach your athletes to have a better connected position? Because horsemanship, contrary to the popular belief, it's not stiff. It's very dynamic,
Yes.
and the best horsemanship riders are moving so much with their body, but you just can't see it because they're so connected to the
Correct.
horse's movement.
Correct. Yeah. Love that question because, again, just going from different coaching styles from one program to another, one of the programs I worked with was the priority was about body position, and my priority was riding horses well. And so, kind of a little bit of a wake up call because they were like, well, but, and I'm like, well, no, just wait, trust the process, go back to this definition, recite to me this definition and practice. And so, tons of different drills would be something that I would do. So we in practice would take our horses and did circle drills and line drills. And we did those for the first maybe 2, 3 weeks. We had, first couple weeks back, you're always getting horses fit more than anything anyway. So it's really not about rider's position and looking pretty those first couple weeks back. You got to get horses fit first. And it's usually hot wherever you are. And so spent so much time like fundamentals of the walk. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, fundamentals of the walk. Your horse has to be square, balanced, shoulders up, driven from behind it. And the walk has to have impulse. It has to be interesting. I can't be bored by it. We're gonna walk in a circle around the cone. I always had like a cone in the middle. And I would have like 6 kids going at one time. And so I make them go in a circle and I would make them just be aware of where their horse's body parts are leaning. Is it leaning into the cone? Is it leaning away from the cone? You have a circle. It needs to be one fine side circle around the cone. It can't deviate. It can't turn into an oval. Like it's got to be a circle. That horse has to stay on track. One, because that horse also learns kind of where it needs to be so that it can be a little bit more willing to like work with you on the body parts, right? If it always knows where it's going to track. But then also you have that kid is focusing on where the horse's body parts would be. And then I always have them, my most favorite thing that I've ever taught. You have horses that are either going to be in front of your leg or behind your legs. I'm sure y'all know what this means, but it's very rare that you have a horse where you put your leg on and it doesn't react in a maybe a little bit of a minor negative way, right? Most horses, especially in college, you put your leg on, it's either going to solo up, suck back, or you put your leg on, it's going to surge off, run forward, right? And so I always tell them, especially in their 4-minute warm ups before they go in show, it's like figure out where that horse is. Is it behind your leg, in front of your leg, and how can we get it to your leg, at your leg, underneath your butt cheeks, all those things, right? Like right where you want it to be. And so when we did the circle drill, and we do the same thing on straight lines too. So when I say straight line drill, same thing. But as you're walking this horse and you're trying to create impulsion and have it be interesting and all those things, and it's leaning out to the left, when you put your left leg on, is it sewing up to your leg? Is it pinning its ears back between the foot? Is it running forward, trying to start off? Like, where is it at? Assess where it's at. And then the next part of like figuring out if it's in front or behind is then making a horse want to like your leg, right? So you put your left leg on and maybe it wants to like turn its head, and no, we're not going to use it. You put your left leg on and it just leans into your foot a little bit harder, maybe slows up, steps back, right? Well, now I've got to get to a point where that horse's reaction isn't negative, right? We got to give it positive feedback, release reward, that sort of thing. So teaching those kids to get their horses to like their job, and having them really focus on that at the walk and focusing that at the job. And then doing the same thing at the extended jog in that circle, and the same thing on the right lead in that circle, and then changing directions, and the exact same thing on the other side, and doing that for 2 weeks straight. Those kids aren't focused on sitting super square and having square shoulders and having elbows super tight at their side and having their butt cheeks clenched so hard that they're to keep their legs stiff and straight and not moving and all those things, right? Those kids are riding because they're figuring out where their horse's body parts are and pushing with their legs and using their seat and releasing their leg and things like that. Controlling the lean, controlling the drive, controlling the impulsion. They're already in the natural position. I always tell them, just put your right elbow up. Like, that's it. That's all you got to do. Put your right elbow up and look where you're going when it's time to go to your pattern. And the transformation that I saw, in that program by teaching that in just those first few months. And then honestly, it took about the whole first semester. We talked about this a lot as a group of 20. Like, it took about that whole first semester for all 21 girls to be like, yeah, this works. Like, this is working. And then the buy-in because of that. And we had a winning season, in the spring, fall. So it made a huge, huge difference. Just like you're saying, going back to those fundamentals of strength work. Like, how important is it to be strong so that you can keep your back straight? Like, keeping your back strong, for example, so you can keep your back straight and flat and have body control, versus just trying to pin your shoulders back, that sort of thing. It's going back to the fundamentals of what you can do to make it way, way, way better. And that's really, really what worked for those girls. I had a kid that turned into an All-American. I think she had maybe 1 or 2 losses on the year. And her goal, at the beginning of the year, she told me, she was like, I just want to be a Big 12 rider of the year. I was like, okay, we can make that happen. And I didn't get a lot from her in our first meeting. I think she was just kind of like, again, maybe a little burnout in her senior year. She's like, I want to be a Big 12 rider of the year. I just want a Big 12 accolade. Maybe she didn't say rider of the year. She said, I want a Big 12 accolade, like a all Big 12 team or something like that. And I was like, okay, extremely talented, very, very natural rider. We spent the first semester focusing on what I just explained. And she was like, I just kind of forgot to do those things. Like, I know how to do those things. I just haven't been told to do those things in a long, long, long time in this format specifically. It's just different when I go home and ride my horse. You kind of know because your trainer tells me these things, but you don't really experience that in this format. And she was undefeated in the Big 12, first team All-American. I mean, just huge, huge transformations just because she was sorted back to those fundamentals. So it works.
Yeah, 100%. So, so true. You have to go back to those fundamentals. And I love the walking drill that you're talking about. So, anytime that I have an issue with the horse, I do try to figure out how to fix it from the walk. So if I have a horse that every time I go to the left lead and they're always falling to the right, I see, okay, do I have that problem just as at the lope, or is it at the other gates too? So
Yeah.
I'll start at the walk and I'll do like straight line drills or circles. So that it's interesting because I do pretty much the same thing. And it's like, okay, is that horse pushing me in the walk? Yes or no? And then if it's no, then you bump up to the jog. Is it pushing in the jog? Yes or no? If it's no, then I bump up to the extended jog. And I just kind of keep going until I figure out like where's the problem originating from. And I like to fix the problem at the lowest gate possible and then move your way up, because it's really hard to fix an issue like that from the highest speed, right? Like there's too many things that are going on. Yeah.
So there's like some people might disagree with this, but if it's happening at the walk, it will happen everywhere. It's gonna happen.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
gonna happen
100%
in
agree.
turns. It's gonna happen in turns. It's gonna happen in your backup. It's gonna happen in your lope. It's gonna happen in lead change. So happening at the walk. Yeah.
I want everybody listening right now to press that rewind button
Yeah.
in like 30 seconds and listen to that again because that is so true. And I say the same things over and over and over again to my personal training clients. I'm like, if you struggle with something in a squat, you're going to struggle with it in a lunge. You're going to
Yes.
struggle with it in a split squat. You're going to struggle with it in everything that you do, right?
Mhm.
Like the problems that you have follow you no matter what you're doing. So that's why when I was saying earlier, talking about the posture, if someone has poor posture, it's originating from somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to figure out where the problems are originating from and you have to fix it from the source. Otherwise, you never get anywhere. So
Absolutely.
I think that I love that that's your philosophy and I agree with that so much. And Lauren, I'm sure it's the same with mindset coaching as well. Like if you have one issue, it's going to follow you uh, everywhere.
Oh, 1000%. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's all about, like you were saying with your friend who's the football coach, it's work for the cause, not the solution. I paraphrased that
Correct.
probably a little differently than he did, but yeah, it's all about finding that cause and let's address that. And if we can, it might take a little bit longer at the beginning, but you know what? The results are going to last.
Mhm. They
Yeah.
absolutely are.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to hear more about how you teach your riders to have a strong position when they're riding. Are you having them strength train? Are you working on specific drills in the saddle? Like, what are you doing to create that really strong, classic, collegiate horsemanship look?
Yeah, I love it. So after my student athletes have an understanding of how to ride a horse is when I then focus on the position. Right. For me, 90% of being a world champion in horsemanship, in my opinion, is knowing how to ride your horse. The final 10% is the icing on the cake, the body position things, right? And so once I understand that you understand the expectation of being a good horse rider with your leg, with your seat, with your core, all those things, right? Then we can go to the body position things. And so I do a lot of different things for it. I mean, strength work, yes. Under saddle, I'll go to my drills in a second. We also just, I mean, I've been lucky to have really good strength coaches that listen when they, I don't know how to ride horses. Like, what body parts are being used, right? So you talk about, telling them the different body parts that, are for being really, really functional horse rider, right? Your back muscles, your core muscles, your leg muscles, your glutes, especially your calves, things like that. Yeah, everything you need. But, I've been lucky to have that aspect of it. So I'm not going to say that it's all me, doing strength drills under saddle. But the strength drills that I do under saddle, I typically will start my strength workout, not necessarily in strength, but in, stretches, things like that, but more so like mobility under saddle. And so I'll have my riders stand up in their saddle, lift their heels to the sky, lower their heels, lift their heels, lower their heels, like hold that, stretching out the calves. You'll find that you get deeper and closer to your saddle. Ankle rolls, so you have that ankle mobility. One of my big pet peeves is toes facing out to the sky, not to the sky, but, looking at me. I don't see the bottom of your feet. So I do a lot of ankle mobility things as well, outside of just standing up in your stirrups, but, ankle rolls, things like that. So that our feet are nice and parallel to our horse's side. Upper body things. We had at Baylor, we called it blocking the haters. That's what we did. We would, we would stick our hands straight out in front of us, like stiff, not stiff arm, but arms
Yep.
straight out in front of us with our hand pressed against the
Frankenstein
wall.
arms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like our hand flat up against the wall. And then we would kind of like open the door out as wide as you can, pulling your hand all the way back towards the tail. And having your
Yep.
eyes kind of guide and follow back just to work on. I think for me, like I was always uncomfortable opening my body up to turn and guide my horse to and using my hips, my speed and things like that. So just getting, opening up the upper body of the rider, shoulder shrugs, shoulder stretches, things like that, shoulder circles, just to warm those body parts up. And then would do something called alternating leg lifts, which I learned from Coach Jesse. Where
Yes.
you like lift your legs or one leg up at a time. So rise it for
Yep.
3 seconds, hold it and lower it. So you're one, strengthening your core muscles, but two, really, really working on kind of that seat connection too, which I
The
found was really cool.
stability. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
correct.
what that leg lift does is it teaches you how to have independent seat from leg connection. So, can you
Correct.
move your right leg without you losing weight in your left seat bone and without your shoulders
Yes.
falling to the left and without you losing connection in your left leg? It's like, can you have
Correct.
control over like the stability left side of the body that's holding your position strong, but can you have the strength and
Right.
the stability on the right side to pull that right leg up? Because if you don't have that in a
Exactly.
leg lift, how are you going to do it when you're loping?
Well, and it was also so revealing to like when, you have a kid that's lifting a leg, her left leg, and she's leaning off to the right side because her hip flexors are too weak and her core muscles are too weak to be able to hold and move that leg
Yep.
independently, like you're saying. So
Yep.
always was really, really, really big fan of that one. Would do a series of different stirrup and those stirrup drills. One thing that I learned from watching a polo match in South Carolina with some friends is, and I've really ever done that until like 3 years ago, watch a polo match before. But those guys post every stride. And
Oh,
something I never like thought about doing while riding and practicing, like so the Hunsy deck and things like that. But something I never really thought about, but they'll like post like stand, sit, stand, sit, stand, sit in rhythm with their horse about every stride or every other stride. And I used that a lot for the girls. One for strength, without stirrups, but two really, really worked on the timing, like knowing where your horse's hind end is at, because if you sit at the wrong time, then you're not gonna be balanced, right? So they learned a lot about kind of where your horse's hind end is at, doing that sort of thing. I would do again something I learned from Coach Jesse, 5 and 5. So posting for 5, standing for 5, sitting for 5 strides. Again, working on stability, control, strength without stirrups, things like that. I would do one of my favorites was standing in one stirrup and posting in one stirrup because then
yep.
you can learn, like which side's weaker as a rider, but you also learn to not be solely independent on that foot and stirrup. So different strength things like that. But when it's all said and done at the end of all the drills and all the strength work that I do, I make the girls sit down and I would walk them through like the position fundamentals per day to use your rule book. So I would say, okay, like take your failure stirrups really quick. I want your ears stacked on top of your shoulders, shoulders stacked on top of your hip bones, hips stacked on top of the backs of your heels. Your toes need to be facing forward and parallel to your horse's side. Might be a little uncomfortable, but it's pretty functional because when you pull that toe forward, parallel to your horse's side, you have full connection from your hips to your thighs, to your knees, to your calves, and the side of your boot and your rowel to be connected to that horse using your entire leg. If your toes pointed away from your horse's side, your calves pull away from your horse's side, you're not being functional, not you're being fundamentally correct to get your horse to maneuver to its best ability. So toes forward, parallel to your horse's side. I like to say, I don't know why this works for me. I got a very visual person. I made this up in my head one day and it worked. It seems to work for the girls too, but I would say,
Those are the best ideas, things that you just make up.
yeah, exactly. So I would say, talking about like your seat position, would say your seat bones have 4 points, right? Two in the front and two in the back. And some riders like to ride at the front 2 points, and some riders like to ride at the back 2 points, right? When you ride at the front two, you have an arch in your back. You're in the back two, your butt's tucked underneath you. You're not quite as connected fully through your seat. Let's open your seat bones up. Let's sit on all 4 seat bones, right? I would do a lot of like shoulder drills. One thing that I learned that you might be able to. I learned this because I like to bodybuild, and so I watched a lot of videos on like
Oh, I love it.
on Instagram and things like that. But one thing I did with the shoulders was, like a lot of horse trainers or people would say, like, pull your shoulders back or pull them down and back. And I would always go, instead of like just saying pull your shoulders back, I would say pull your shoulders up to your ears, down to the ground, and then back to the tail of your horse, which opens up your chest and sternum way, way more, because something to do with like the muscles, angles of your, I don't know, joints, muscles, and things like that provides more reach or stretch, or I
Yep.
don't really know. It works better though.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know more than you think you do about the body, Bobby. You know like the field work. Like you might not necessarily know like what the terms are and how it works,
Yeah.
but like you know what it looks like and you know what's right and you know what's wrong. So you know more than you think you do. So the problem with the traditional roll your shoulders down and back is that typically creates an arch in the back if somebody has poor shoulder mobility
Yeah.
and a tight chest and weak back muscles. So those
Yeah.
three things are what characterizes poor posture, right? You've got a tight chest because we're rounded forward in our back and our shoulders are forward. So then our shoulders learn to be in this rounded forward position. And then
Yeah.
so the chest just gets tight and it holds those shoulders there. And then because the shoulders are in a rounded forward position, you tend to have poor shoulder mobility in general because they're just always in this position. And then
Yes.
you have weak back muscles because the weak back muscles are what are allowing the shoulders to round forward in the first place. So you have to correct all three things in order to have stronger posture. So if a trainer is constantly telling you to roll your shoulders down and back, but you don't have that mobility in your shoulders, you're going to steal it from your back. So the body will always take the path of least resistance. And so if you have poor shoulder mobility, but you're asking your shoulders to roll down and back anyway, your body's going to say, well, that's really hard for me. But if I arch the back, then it gives you the false sensation that your shoulders
Right.
are down and back when really they're not, right? So
Yeah. Right.
the way that you explained it of up and then down and then back, that's going to hold your shoulders using your back muscles more instead of using the shoulder joint to roll open. Because if you're
You're
using the muscles, then you're not going to overextend the spine. You're just engaging the back muscles to literally pull the shoulder blade further back.
You're reminding me of at South Carolina in my second year there. I joked about it because again I was into this bodybuilding and it kind of became a thing at practice. But we would do like a lat spread, basically, like practice
Yeah.
spreading our lats and then like really opening the chest, engaging our back muscles, having a flat back, and then be like, okay, now elbows at your side. And so we always joked about that too. But kind of realize what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So that's why that method works. So if you're listening to this
Mhm.
and you're like, "Oh, I do that," then first you have to work on your posture in the daily life, right? Like you have to address the root
Yeah.
issue, but then you also have
Mhm.
to create strengthening and more mobility in the places that I mentioned, right? So you need more flexibility in the chest, you need more shoulder mobility, you need more upper back strength. And if you work on those three things, then you have to figure out how to be effective with your body in this new position when you go to ride. So there's really 3 points that if you wanna have stronger upper body positioning when you go to ride, and if you don't want your trainer to keep yelling at you, it takes time and it takes a lot of conscious effort, but it is possible, I promise.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And then what are the other things that you would have your girls do to treat themselves like athletes? What else did you guys do? Did you focus on their nutrition? I assumed they were working out in the gym. Like, what all did they do?
Yeah, a lot of programs probably operate similar to the ones that I've experienced, but from my experience, I'm really big into the athlete as a whole, and I'm actually working on a side project that one day I hope to talk about publicly soon, but I can't yet. But it encompasses the idea of the entire athlete, the whole athlete, right? It's the importance of being a great athlete isn't just being a really strong person, isn't just being a really good horse rider. It is also nutritionally taking care of yourself and your body and having a good healthy gut, but then also is about the mental performance side of things too. So the whole athlete is really, really important. And so been lucky enough to be at universities that foster that. And so really great nutritionists at each of those schools. One thing growing up for me that I struggled with was like, you got to be skinny to win the horsemanship. And I just don't believe that. Once I started honestly just being part of the collegiate format, again, that level playing field, it's just not about being skinny, it's about being good at riding horses and stuff. Took that with me. But as a youth, you hear those things or you see those things and you put you in a bad spot, right? But true health and true fitness is having a good, healthy gut that's fed a lot and really, really well. I also learned that through bodybuilding. So I love to eat, and the more I eat, the better I look. So I've been loving that journey
Yeah.
for myself too. But so absolutely, I think also just sharing that message about my experience with student athletes who maybe struggle with those things also helps too. Again, having vulnerable conversations with people, especially girls of impressionable age, it's so important to be a good leader. And I don't think there are enough of those out there that are willing to one have the vulnerable conversation too, but then to also lead by example, doing the hard stuff like taking care of your body, lifting weights heavy, and eating a lot of food. I didn't get fat and big and bulky doing that. I got really strong and lean and healthy, and I felt really, really good mentally because of that too. But then, so the nutrition side of it, absolutely, but then also the strength part of it is extremely, extremely important. I become a better horse trainer because I work out and have been on this fitness journey for the last like 3 years or so. Incredibly different experiences from last time I worked at the Wheelers, where I wasn't doing that every day. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can get stuff done way more now.
Yeah,
um,
your energy levels have to be so much better.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely is. So that aspect of it as well, and then the mental performance side. I think can't get enough of that. Right? It's you do all of this work. I was working with a lady the other day in a lesson, and she's an amateur, and she was so good and so well connected to her horse. When we were going in a circle, I was like, okay, let's go on a pattern, and everything fell apart on the pattern. I'm like, riding on the pattern is no different, again, fundamentally, than it is going in circles over here too. So we talked and worked through that mental mental side of things, right? Just because there's a common there, and it doesn't mean that we have to be different horse riders. We have to be different too. So, that it's all important, all of it. You can't just have one thing. You have to have the horse.
Yeah, 100%. So true. You have to have all the pieces. If you're missing any, it's going to show up in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we missed? Lauren, did you have anything else?
Honestly, this was fabulous. Is there any advice that you would like to share that we maybe haven't covered for those coming into the collegiate world?
I love it. Yes, I do actually. I think it is so important now, though the realm of college athletics is changing entirely, right? We have the pay per play now and revenue sharing for student athletes. And a lot of that money is going to go to big teams like football teams, like revenue generating sports. And so I think there's a lot of financial influence in college athletics these days that maybe doesn't affect our sport specifically, but affects the realm of college athletics and universities as a whole. And so when these kids are going, if you're a student athlete or a prospective student athlete, somebody who wants to ride in college, and you're going on your official visits or maybe unofficial visits, and you're looking at schools and assessing them, I always say, pick somewhere where you could live. Like, I love living out east in South Carolina. Not a big fan of Texas. Sorry, Lauren. It's a little flat. Well, it's a little flat and a little. I love California. I love my mountains, right? And so make sure you live
Right.
where you can see yourself living. From a culture value standpoint as well, but also like just geographically, somewhere you can be happy. Make sure you go to a school that isn't just giving you a really cool official visit, but is again to your core, follows your belief system. People can lie on official visits, coaches can lie. I'm not saying people do that all the time, but when you're recruiting, you're trying to make it seem like heaven on earth, the prospect that you want to come to that school, right, as a coach. So make sure that you're getting to the core values of that university, of that team. Make sure you figure out where your core values are going into the process, right? Like, if you want a really big, strong team dynamic for the school that you're going to go ride for, make sure that that is the value of that team. You're going to have teams that are a little bit more individualized. Like, you feel like you have certain teams that feel like they're just riding barns, a bunch of different girls who are of the same age that are riding show horses, and maybe there's 5 girls who are competing. You're going to be the ones that are riding every single day, and you might be a member of that team, but you're not going to feel that, right? Because you're not competing. So you have teams like that, which I'm not saying they're wrong, but that's how that team operates. And you have teams that are fully bought into the process of developing a really cool culture. Make sure you go and understand who your head coach is as a person, because your head coach and the leadership there about programming is, I'll make it this, a team's success is a direct result of the leadership of the head coach at that program. So make sure that that leadership is leadership that you want to abide by, that you can buy into, that gives you the right feeling. If it's not giving you the right feeling, don't go there. Because if you want to win and you want to have success and you want to learn something, I don't know, whatever it might be, like, you've got to make sure that the leadership there is going to put you to foster that environment for you. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice for your success and your happiness for 4 years, because they're the most important 4 years of your life. Maybe not the entire most, but some of the most important 4 years of your life. So it's a big decision to make at such a young age. So just choose wisely. Don't just go to the school that is giving you a really cool official visit, that has a really cool SEC football game or a Big 12 football game, whatever it might be, that has cool like party energy. But make sure that you like the major that you're going to go study, and make sure that the professors are bought into you, and make sure that, again, geographically, it's a cool place, to make sure that the culture of the girls that are on that team already, talk to them, interview them, get some candid information from them, because 4 years is a lot of time, and transferring is not easy either.
Yeah. And like you were talking about before, how to be a great athlete, there's so many parts, not just the physical, not just the riding the horse, but the ethos of it all. And that's what you have great advice for, is that these people look at the culture, and there's more to the whole collegiate experience than the riding the horses. And that can really influence whether or not you have a good time.
Absolutely. I would argue that you should not even, I'm not the originator of this saying, but I've worked for people who have said this, and I love it. And it's that you need to go to university, that if the equestrian program just disappeared, that you could stay there, because you have to have you're there for the education at the end of the day, right? Yeah, it's a cool benefit that you get to go ride horses and stuff, but you're there for your education. So make sure the university the place you want a degree from, and the people that go to that university are people you like.
I love that. Thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
great.
of course. It was fun to reflect. I loved it.
Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, all linked in the podcast notes. We'll see you next time. The information provided by Elevate Your Ride is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical or professional advice. While we discuss health and fitness topics related to equestrians, the content provided through this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests on Elevate Your Ride are their own and should not be taken as professional guidance. We strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, but we cannot guarantee that the information will be applicable to every individual listener or that it reflects the most current research or guidelines. Before making any changes to your health and fitness routine, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can provide personalized advice based on your individual needs and circumstances. Elevate Your Ride and its creators will not be liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, special, exemplary, or other damages arising from the use of information on this podcast. Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. We are committed to providing high-quality content and appreciate your trust in us as a source of information for your health and fitness journey.